That's what I call pro talk. When you really don't know the answer, you just make it up.
My rut is that I am in a rut.
To get the pilot of Red Arrow going. This is really a way to skip class.
I want to say, hey, those boys right there are entertainers.
There you go. That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said on this podcast.
Alex Rutledge here with American Roots Outdoors TV.
Hey, this is Lee and Tiffany Lukoski from the Crush TV.
Hi, I'm Don Higgins.
This is Jeff Lindsay.
Hey, everybody, this is Mark Drury with Drury Outdoors.
Hey, this is Craig Fitz of Trained Assassins TV. You're listening to Dave and JP on Pro Talk Outdoors, the craziest two I know.
Hey everybody, we're back here at Pro Talk Outdoors, and you know what else is back? Well, Dave and Eric, they're back. Back from a trip out west, Nebraska, northwest Nebraska, like at the three-corner state area, Wyoming, and...
Yeah, I think that's called a panhandle. I'm not sure if it is
a panhandle?
Yeah.
Really?
Maybe the Nebraska panhandle.
Okay. Well, nonetheless, you're out there hunting Miriam's and had quite the adventure, to say the least.
What a trip, folks. And I'm telling you, if you ever aspire to go after a different species of bird, that is a fantastic area to go to. We stayed in Chadron. I'm trying to say that the right way. Chadron.
Why is it that places that you and I go, this time we didn't go together, but we always go to a place that's got funny names? Remember down in Louisiana, everything down there had a crazy name, the towns did?
Yeah, well, we don't say it the right way. We've got that southern Indiana hickish kind of dialect slang sound to us, and I was calling it Chadron. No, it's Chadron. But anyway, this is a very welcoming town, a great community. It's really a community that's kind of based around hunting. I mean, they treat opening a turkey season almost like it's a holiday around there. It's,
really?
Oh yeah.
Well, that shocks me to hear that, in that you had so much success going door to door.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. In that area, what I've noticed is the birds were totally different than what we experience around here. And part of that is because they were still wintered up. So you had huge flocks of birds. They weren't really dispersed out. So a lot of the birds were kind of hanging out on ranches where these ranchers, they've got big cattle farms. They've got a lot of money invested in their cattle, and it costs a fortune to feed them. Well, they don't want to feed a bunch of turkeys also. So, when they treat turkeys almost like they're nuisance birds out there. So a lot of those farmers, if you go door to door, knock on some doors, they're very welcoming and inviting you to come and hunt.
Because really it's doing them a service.
Absolutely. You're kind of, even if you don't have any success in killing it, you're probably scaring them away and keeping them off of their feed for a while. So
sure.
So pretty well.
Are some of these farmers hunters themselves, or do they just not have time for that?
They're ranchers, JP, not farmers.
Excuse me.
Eric made that mistake. He actually said something to the landowner we were hunting on. He said, "Yeah, you got a nice farm here," and they said, "This is a ranch." Touche. Yeah, this is a ranch, not a farm.
For those of you listening, you didn't see the emphatic head nod at the appropriate time.
But yeah, so it's ranches out there. I mean, they don't really grow much as far as crops in that area. They grow some alfalfa, some hay to cut, that kind of thing. But it's a big cattle industry up there, huge.
So, but around here, I mean, we call them cattle farms. We don't call them cattle ranches.
Well, there's a difference around here in Indiana. If you see a 100-acre parcel, that's pretty good size. Up there,
child's play, huh?
You're talking thousands.
Right. So
thousands. Is
that the difference between a farm and a ranch then?
I have no idea. But anyway, these ranches out there, they're legit. I mean, beautiful country, and they're welcoming as far as a guy that can walk up, knock on their door, and gain access to hunt their property. And the public ground is good also. It just so happened that when we were up there, the birds were wintered up. They were mainly on the rancher's property on private ground and not as much on public ground.
Yeah, and it's good that you found somebody that was welcoming. So,
yeah.
But along that line, I have 1,000,001 questions. I've actually had some of our listeners come to me and ask me questions about your hunt. And I have to tell them, I hadn't gotten the full scoop. I've gotten some minor details here and there, but I wanted to save the dirty stuff for when I saw you in person. And the story I heard at dinner was wonderful, but I have a lot of specific questions about tactics that our listeners are wanting to ask you themselves. One listener, Adam Saunders, actually really curious about the difference between calling tactics for an eastern bird versus a Merriam, because he's going on a Merriam hunt in just 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, here's the way I would answer that, and this is probably kind of a cop-out answer. I'm not sure how much of a difference there actually is. I can speak to where the birds were at in their cycle when we were out there.
Okay.
They were not really fired up on breeding. You had huge groups of gobblers together. You had huge groups of hens, and then you had a couple flocks that had just some disbursement there. They had some longbeards mixed in with some hens, and you saw some breeding activity. I actually saw one longbeard breed a hen while we were out there. You saw a lot of longbeards that were actually fighting. They were, getting together and spurring each other and carrying on quite a bit. So some of that was going on, but for the most part, it was almost like they were in bachelor groups or something. So
were you aggressive with your calls?
No.
Okay. That's
no,
what I
you weren't.
thought.
Here's the thing, because you found out. Now there was a couple birds we were able to call in. We used the Bang and the Boss game calls, and they answered those really well. It was pretty cool. You could see sometimes there was 10 or 12 longbeards at one time in the exact same little frame shot of the camera, and you could give them some yelps, and they would gobble, and they'd answer that, and they'd get a little fired up and come in. But for the most part, you see more gobblers yelping than you saw actually gobbling.
Okay.
So they really weren't that aggressive. I mean, it was kind of like hunting winter birds around here.
So let me ask you this then. What about decoy strategy? I mean, did you even use them? And
we did.
If you did, how did you put them in relation to the blind?
Okay, yeah, we did. And honestly, the decoys during the hunt, we didn't have a whole lot of success with that. Now, day one of the hunt, we had roosted some birds, and I think that was the key for the entire hunt, was actually utilizing the evenings to roost birds, find out exactly where they were roosting at. And remind me to come back to the roosting part of that, because there's a key factor with these Merriams on roosting that's really important for anybody that's wanting to go out there. But we were setting up basically in their travel corridor, basically where they wanted to come, and we had a strutter set up, and we had a breeding hen set up as a decoy. And most of the birds shied away from them a little bit. They didn't really want to interact. Now,
and it wasn't that this wasn't a quality decoy.
No. It was quality, and it was a good setup. But here's what we did have, and Eric actually got a shot day one because of this. There was one longbeard that was a more mature bird and was kind of the bully bird in the group. And he was literally whipping the snot out of every other longbeard up there.
He was the boss.
Yeah, he was. And he ended up breeding a hen. And when his hen, after he bred the hen, and a couple other hens left, they kind of came by our general area, probably 30 yards away from us. When they did, that bird caught a glimpse of our decoy setup. And as soon as he did, he went from full strut to a half strut and sprinted all the way in to our decoy setup. Really cool interaction there. He was spitting and drumming and, carrying on, doing the whole 9 yards. However, when he closed out and got really close to the decoy, he didn't start beating the tar out of the decoy like you would expect. He kind of shied away from it there at the end. But Eric had a good quality shot opportunity out of it.
I'm sure he'd love to hear that was such a high-quality shot that he didn't convert.
Yeah.
I know he felt bad about it, because he the first thing he texted was, strike 4.
Yeah, yes.
So obviously you talked a little bit about you were not all that aggressive on the calling, and the decoys weren't necessarily the best way to go. What else about the Merriams are that much different than the Eastern?
Well, here's one thing, and I'll go back to the roosting point. The key to our success for our hunt was realizing exactly where these birds were going to roost at, where they preferred to roost. And basically, it's almost like patterning a deer or anything. Sure. You find out where they like to bed. So when you find out where these birds like to roost, you capitalize on that and you move in tight. We moved our blind in really tight. The tighter we got to the roosting tree, the better off we were, with the exception of being right under the tree. Because here's the thing. When an Eastern pitches out of a tree, oftentimes, more often than not, they glide. They're going to pitch out. They could pitch out for 100 yards or 200 yards. I've seen birds in Kentucky come off of a ridge and go 300 yards in the air before they hit the ground, which is a challenge because you never know where a bird's going to pitch out at, which way he's going to go after he gets off the roost. With a Merriam, it's totally different when they come out of the tree. They come out almost like a helicopter, straight down. They don't pitch out and glide. They just flap their wings and they go straight from the tree to the ground, right underneath the tree. So if you get in tight, good chance you can have some action right off the roost.
So are you putting your blind out 2 hours before you start the hunt in the morning, or are you staying, an hour after dark and putting it out at night?
We actually did that both ways. When we felt like we had the right setup or were close, we would wait till the birds actually get in the tree, wait till it got really dark, then we would move the blind in tight. Most of the time, we were roosting the birds, and then whenever the next morning we were getting in at least an hour before they were starting to gobble or anything or waking up, and we would just pop up the blind and slip it in as close as we could, get it in a setup area where we felt like we were in for action whenever they flew down out of the tree.
So, and on this ranch you were on, were you traveling long distances carrying the gear, or were you able to actually park somewhere reasonably close to where you hunted?
Probably not as far as what you might think, but far enough for my old tail to be a little sore
as well as I know you. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, we probably realistically each day. And we had multiple setups each day. It wasn't like we sit in one spot the entire time, but I would estimate we probably walked an average of 4 to 5 miles a day. Mm-hmm. And with the packs, a big thank you to Wyatt Rivers because he loaned us a couple of, I don't even know, the rail packs.
Frame pack.
Yeah, the frame packs. And without those, there's no way we could have kept up with packing those blinds in, those chairs in, those bows in, the camera gear. There's a lot to pack around whenever you're videoing for a hunt.
And it's not even as much the weight, it's the awkwardness and objects and not having enough limbs so you just strapped it all down to that frame. And
yeah, it was on the frame and it went on my back and I didn't have any problem at all. Interesting enough, I have bad knees. I can't even play, I can't play softball anymore. I can't run a lot or anything. The first day out there, my knees started acting up and I was like, oh no, here we go. The longer I was out there, the better my knees felt.
What have I been trying to tell you?
You're just trying to get me to work out, man. I don't want to do that.
Well, come on, man. It's going to make you feel better. Look good, feel good. So, okay, let me ask you this then. Obviously, you touched on a lot of these different things. When you said you hit 3 or 4 different spots in a day, is that 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening? Are you hunting daylight to dusk? Are you stopping at lunch? How did you guys conduct that?
Here's basically what we did most days. Now, there was a couple of, one day we kind of did something a little different, but for the most part, we set up in the morning where we could take, try to take advantage of where the roost was at on the fly down. After the birds cleared out, then we would kind of regather and try to think where we wanted to set up midday. So we would relocate the blind to that location and then either maybe go get a bite to eat or we would sit over there for a while. We went back to town one time every day during the middle of the day, but we had a midday set after the morning set, and then oftentimes we would move from the midday set to the afternoon set. So probably 3 sets on average a day.
Okay. And where did you see the majority of your success? Morning, noon, evening?
I would say birds tended to be more active almost evening than morning. But it varied. And here's what happened, what I noticed. It's almost like these birds have a set amount they're going to gobble in a day's time. Mm-hmm. Whenever the weather was really rotten in the morning, we had a really foggy day. And during that foggy day, the birds weren't really aggressive or active off the roost. However, that evening, they were super aggressive and gobbling and yelping and a lot of activity that evening because of that. Vice versa, whenever, the weather was really good in the morning, you had more morning activity, and then the evenings, they'd still gobble some and carry on, but not as much as they would on the other day.
So for somebody that's going out there on do-it-yourself hunt or an outfitted hunt, what is the number one piece of advice you can give to somebody when it comes to hunting Merriams, not just hunting turkey, Merriam?
Here's what I would say. These birds are unlike Easterns in the fact that, and not just birds, but animals in general out west, they travel great distances. You know, an Eastern may travel, I don't even know, maybe a mile in a day or something. They're going to cover some ground, look around a little bit, but for the most part, they have a lot of cover and they have some open fields they go to. These Merriams, there's not a lot of cover there, so they're constantly on the move. They don't just sit around in any one place for any period of time. So try to capitalize on the fact that even if there's not a bird there right now, if you have sign, you can really go off a sign. If you have a lot of turkey droppings, scratchings, you know that birds like that area, they will be back in that day most likely. So I would, number one, make sure you roost the birds every night, move in tight on them the next morning, and whenever that morning hunt is up, that doesn't necessarily mean that that spot is done for the day. That may be a great spot to be back in the afternoon, because they're going to probably come back and roost in the same location, most likely, unless something happens to bump the birds.
2 more questions for you, and we'll make them quick before we move to this middle segment. On a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being an Eastern, just because you know those, you've hunted them, pretty much your whole life, where is the Merriam on the scale of difficulty?
I can't put it as high, not even close. Because the birds are really, number one, if you find the birds, you're going to find a lot of them. They're very plentiful. And number two, I've never experienced the kind of vocalizations with Easterns that I did with these Merriams. You see everything. I mean, it's almost one of those things that if a guy started out hunting over there, it would kind of ruin him a little bit. So I don't want to say they're an easy hunt, but it's definitely, you're going to experience everything in the turkey woods in 1 week hunting Merriams that you may not see for years hunting Easterns.
Okay.
As far as, I wouldn't call it easy by any means. It's a strenuous hunt. And
so what are you, an 8 or a 7?
No.
A 9?
Probably a 3 or 4.
If an Eastern is a 10, a Merriam comes in at a 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But and here's what I'm basing that on.
That's good stuff.
Here's what I'm basing that on. We had several opportunities. We were hunting with a bow.
Right.
We had several opportunities.
Which greatly increases the difficulty.
It does, and we still had several opportunities where we were really close to closing out the deal. You just don't have that many opportunities hunting Easterns. With a gun, if we were hunting with a gun, we would have easily been able to fill our 3 tags apiece in the first day or 2. Easy.
Yeah. Well,
with the opportunities we had.
Right. And I think some of our listeners, at least that have asked me questions, are going during gun season, so that'll be something to keep in their hat a little bit. The only other question is, how likely are you to go back?
100%. Good Lord willing, and my knees will hold up, and the health's good, and I've got the funds to do it. I will be back next year for sure.
Keep using them. They'll hold up. We'll be back in a second. You're listening to Pro Talk Outdoors.
Hey guys, before we get to our guest segment for today, just wanted to throw out there here, we're getting into the 3rd week of April. And while across the country, it may not feel like springtime very much with the cold temperatures and all the snow that we've been receiving, it's still time to start prepping for those food plots, especially the real-world soybean blends. For all the folks that are wanting to put beans out there, it's a great time to start making preparations for that. If you haven't got a soil test done yet, it's still not too late. Go ahead and get that soil test done and sent in. Also, as soon as that green starts coming through, it's a good time to go ahead and start spraying those fields, getting them ready to plant. Start thinking about putting down your, if you're going to use 2,4-D, that needs to be done a little sooner than just the Roundup. Those beans are Roundup ready, so you can actually spray those right up until the time you're actually planting. But if you're going to use something like a 2,4-D to kill off a little bit, have a harder kill, that needs a little bit more time, probably a good 3-4 weeks before you can start planting after that. Otherwise, you risk those beans being damaged with that 2,4-D usage. So even though it's a little cold out there, it's time to start thinking about that, folks. Get ready to use those real-world wildlife products, especially the soybean blend. You can go to realworldwildlifeproducts.com for more information.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Pro Talk Outdoors. We've got Don Freeland from Women Hunt Too. And Don, number one, thank you for coming on. And number two, I think it's really cool. We haven't had a chance to do an episode like this with somebody that's really making a great movement, not only in the social landscape, but everywhere. Just an awesome movement that you guys are doing. So first off, man, just thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. Yeah, we're trying our best to get out there and get the message, and basically it's about getting women outdoors.
And it's not just one page, am I correct? Obviously you have
Correct.
women, is it Women Fish Too, and what else do you have going on?
Women Camp Too.
Okay.
Those are the three main ones, and Women Hunt Too, yes, all three.
And so do you get an equal response from all three of those pages, or is one of those kind of taken off a little faster than the other?
Well, the hunting is by far, hands down, the most popular. But fishing is right behind them. It's really making great gains, and women love getting outdoors. And fishing is something that women can do by themselves. Go on an embankment. You don't have to have a heavy lifting. You don't have to have somebody helping you with heavy lifting. Like if you shot a deer, who's going to help you drag that deer up? If you catch a fish, you can pretty much take care of it yourself. So fishing is coming on strong, because at some point in a woman's life, they've picked up a fishing pole. Not necessarily a gun or a rifle or a bow, but they picked up a fishing pole, whether they were a little girl or even dating a guy who was into fishing. So I'm finding a lot of women tend to get a little bit older. They're coming back to it.
So let me ask you this, Dawn, because I think this is a very interesting topic, and probably one of the most important topics that we as hunters face today, really, because it's all about recruitment right now. And you look at numbers across the board dwindling when you're talking about the numbers of people that hunt and people that fish and that are going out and supporting conservation movements. What exactly are you doing with your group that promotes women getting involved in the outdoors that maybe no one else has really hit on? Because you've done something different, because you're really, really popular.
Yeah, basically my message, like I said, is encouraging women to get outdoors. We belong someplace else besides work, home, or their mall. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's fine too, but we also belong outdoors too. What I'm finding that will help facilitate, to continue the hunting tradition alive is getting women out there. Studies show that if the mother is an avid hunter or outdoorsman, then the chances increase dramatically that the children will be as well, compared to if just the father was a hunter or outdoorsman. It's a great way to secure the future of hunting by having the mom or the woman as a big influence with the children and helping that secure into our future. It gives them a great sense of accomplishment. Their self-confidence goes up. This is something that they can do, providing for the family, for themselves. Being able to get meat that is, fresh, organic, not shot with all these chemicals and hormones that are out there nowadays. And the industry itself is taking notice of us as well and taking us more serious as a real consumer in the hunting world, partly because we're taking it more serious. Whether it's hunting clothes, apparel, more bows. We have more bow options for women than we've ever had. The same with guns, shorter stocks, they're lighter weight. We're having so many more things are available to us than we've ever had in the past. So it really does encourage, and it does really help them.
So is this a product of how you were raised? Was it a dual hunter household kind of thing growing up, or how?
My dad was he was an avid hunter. He loved anything outdoors, anything to do with the outdoors, and he would take us fishing. But to go hunting, even like small game, he would take my older brother, and they go off and go small game hunting. And I was always curious, like, well, what are you doing? Where are you going? Well, why can't I go too? Back then it was, well, it's not really for girls. Why don't you go see what your mom is doing in the kitchen, kind of a thing. And so I was always curious, but, I didn't know what they were doing. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to know more about it, but I just wasn't really able to. And my dad passed away when I had just turned 11, so I didn't have much more influence beyond that. And then later on, my husband, I met him. He loved, hunting in the outdoors as well. So I got some of that, from him, that energy, that interest more fed the curiosity more. And then finally I just said, okay, I got to find out more about this. What is the big draw? What is it that is just drives you guys so intently? And I finally, sat with him one day and sat out in the woods with him, and I think I brought a book or something, and I was kind of looking down and not paying attention to what was going on, and I had put my head down and reading. I don't know, it was probably a textbook or something from college, and all of a sudden I looked up for something, and it had been started snowing, and I hadn't known that it was snowing. And by the time I looked up, you see everything with this light white blanket of snow just slowly drifting through the trees, and you see a doe and a couple fawns walk by, just meandering through, just like you would see in the movies, like one of those aha moments that the angels come from the sky, and you just go, oh, I get it. Oh, this is gorgeous. This is where I want to be. Now I'm getting it. I'm understanding at least, there's something out there for me. So, and then figuring out how to make that work for me and my personality and where I hunt in our state, in our area, and figuring all of that out just came later. So I didn't really grow up with it, but I had that curiosity my whole life until I put all the pieces together like a little jigsaw puzzle, and I just ran with it.
It's very interesting, the story that you just told, Dawn. We had, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, we had Melissa Bachman on the show. And Melissa,
awesome.
Yeah, she is super, super incredible individual to encourage women to get outdoors. But Melissa told a story very near your story whenever she was a child. I mean, almost identical.
Really?
Yeah, she wanted so much. Yeah, her dad took her fishing, and she wanted to go hunting, and she wasn't allowed to go to deer camp because that was for guys, and she had to stay behind, and she missed out on that for so many years until she finally was old enough, and she's like, heck with it, I'm getting involved,
That's exactly right.
So that is so interesting, and I got to think that if that was your experience and that was Melissa Bachman's experience,
I'll have to go listen to that and check that out. That's interesting.
Absolutely,
wow.
Yeah, and you got to think that that's probably the experience that most women had when they were growing up if they were interested in it. So I guess to turn that around, what is something, other than the obvious answer of just take your kids hunting, what is something that we all can do, even if we don't have daughters, maybe to encourage young ladies or young girls to get involved in the outdoors?
Getting involved with any of the local hunter safety classes that a lot of communities offer. Even just going there and being part of that and volunteering there, even at field day, and just because there's always a few girls in each class, and just talking to them maybe one-on-one and encouraging them on the side, anything that would help, encourage them to keep going forward, even though you're in this big classroom full of guys. It's okay, you're here too, and you can do just as well, and it's all right, and you belong here too. I know I didn't take my first hunter safety class till I was in my probably 30 years old. I was older, and here I am with a bunch of 12-year-old boys. It was fun, let me tell you. But I had a great time, and I learned so much, and of course I just ran with it. I loved it all.
Well, obviously we've touched on the roots a little bit and just how this thing kind of got started, but I do want to ask you a couple tough questions, and I know that there were challenges just getting started, not only with outdoors and getting yourself exposed, but getting started with your organization and the push that you're making now. One of the biggest challenges, in my estimation, that somebody like you may encounter is a little bit of the rigid opinions that men may have about a woman's status or their place or heaven forbid, where they belong, to use a very crude term. Do you encounter any of that? And if you do, how do you combat it?
You combat it with laughing, with laughter, and just having a good time with it. Because if you take it too serious, everybody gets pissy and it doesn't do any good. When I first started, I experienced the most of that. I used to get heckled, literally heckled, when I would do expos and shows. I do them out throughout the state of Michigan, and the farther north I went, the worse it was. I had things like, I'm in my booth, with the T-shirts and talking to girls about hunting, and the guys would walk by and go, women shouldn't belong in the woods. They need to get out of there. Oh, they're going to kill us all. We're all going to die. it's not safe for anybody to be out there with you ladies out there. At first I was kind of like shocked. I was shocked that somebody would speak like that in this day and age. But it only took once. Then after that, I was ready for him. You could you can sit in the corner and cower and be upset and be pissy about it, or you can say things like, "Hey, I told you to wait in the truck," or "Next time you come back here, I told you bring me a sandwich." At this point, everybody that's walking past him in the expo is laughing because he didn't expect that response. He's expecting you to say something like, "Leave me alone," or "Quit it picking on me," kind of an attitude. But you have to face it with laughter and joking. And I've never had anybody give me a hard time after that. In fact, they stand there bust out laughing with some of the comments that I make, and they come back. And I actually had a guy one time, or twice actually, I've said those exact words, like, "I told you to come back here, you bring me a drink." I've had two guys twice bring me a drink.
So
breaking, use it one more often.
Breaking that stereotype, is that one of your biggest goals, and how do you think you can continue to push that effort?
I don't let it affect me. I'm not really thinking about breaking stereotypes or breaking goals. I'm just being me. I'm just doing what I do and what I love to do, and that just comes through. I'm just an average, middle-aged, overweight woman that loves to get outdoors. And whether it's on our farm here in Michigan, or, we travel a little bit and go to bear hunting in Canada every year, or even hit South Illinois. I just love doing what I do. Whether that encourages other people or not, great. And the social media aspects of it is just growing exponentially. I mean, if you put all of my social media numbers together, we're looking at close to 500,000 followers. That's just the people that's clicked like and committed to it. We're not even talking about the ones that come just visit the page. It's just about, when you're just yourself and you're just the average Joe showing sometimes you have mishaps. You know what? Sometimes guns misfire. Sometimes you hit a tree with your bolt on your crossbow. Sometimes those things happen. If you only show the perfect and the perfected hunts and the perfect shots, it does a disservice for a lot of other people that are coming up. You got to show the imperfections too, so it shows that you're real and you're making that connection and that bond with a lot of those people that are out there thinking, you know what? If she can do that, well, I can do that too. Well, hey, maybe I should get my old bow out and see if I can pull that back and see if I can do this. That encourages people alone without even trying.
So do you think the biggest hurdle that other ladies may face could be just the initial challenge of getting into the outdoors and less about the stereotype that they may face among their peers?
Well, the stereotype's there, but you just don't have to think about it or look at it or give it another thought. You just do what you want to do and go on with your day. Don't let that stop you. If you're going to continue on, this is something you really want to do, you're going to make it happen. We belong there, and if you can make excuses or you can make plans. You can figure out a way to make things work so you can get out there, or you can stay home and sit on the couch and whine about it. Which one do you want to do? You figure out ways. You figure out those hurdles, and you figure out obstacles. Figure out a way that works for you. That's the best way to do it. And just people seeing you do that, or hearing you do that, or reading about it, or seeing it on social media, that encourages everybody. It's without even, like I said, not even trying. It's just the way it is. I just share my experiences, and it just automatically happens.
Well, obviously the following is pretty big. What's the next step? Where are you guys headed after this?
Well, I'm still recovering from a car accident that we were in last summer. We were T-boned. So I'm at the end of my recovery. So this is actually the second radio spot I've done since then, since last summer. So I'm looking forward to bigger and better things this year, doing more radio, doing more blogging, hopefully traveling some more. It's just all about, just in whatever opportunity comes knocking on my door, it's about opening them and running through the doorway with it. When I first started this business, I didn't intend to start it as a business. I was just asked to be on a radio show, and they couldn't pay me at the time, so all they could do was link back any commercial things that I had or any things that I was selling, and of course I wasn't doing any of that. So Women Hunt 2 was born at that time, and just out of necessity, and then people started asking, well, where's your T-shirts? What do you mean? where's your T-shirts? Well, yeah, I want to buy a T-shirt that says Women Hunt 2 on it. You do? Okay, I guess I'll start selling Women Hunt 2 T-shirts. Well, do you have any hats or decals? What? You want to buy a hat or a decal? Yeah. Where are they at? And it just kind of took on a life of its own. It's just going off from that, just from what people showing me what they want to see, what they want to hear, and it just keeps going with the opportunities that keep knocking on my door, and people keep asking, and just never saying no, and just running with it.
Well, I think that it kind of goes without being said with the following that you have, and kind of the movement that's going on in the entire outdoors. You're doing great things with getting other women involved and letting them know that it's okay to get out and participate on any level that you can. Even I think when you and I talked before, you said something about, hey, you don't have to hunt even. Go outside and take your dog for a walk. Do something. Get outside. Get involved.
Go for a hike, yes. Go for a day hike. Go for an afternoon walk. There's some of these different trails and different parks that we have. Go, like I said, grab a fishing pole, go to a river embankment. You don't like to touch worms? Great, get a rubber worm. You don't like to touch the fish? Get a glove. You can keep making excuses, or you can figure out these obstacles that are keeping you back from doing some stuff that you might like to do again, or that you've done at one time in your life. And it's about just having a good time doing it. And just from that alone, you start having a good time. You talk to your friends about it, and you're encouraging them, and then they want to come with you next time, and they want to see what it's all about, and you're just spreading that message out there.
Well, Dawn, before we let you go, tell everybody where they can keep up with you and what you're doing and everything that's going on social media. What's the best way for them to keep track?
Oh, my goodness, it's impossible to keep track to me. I'm kidding. You never know where I'm going to show up. But WomenHunt2.com is the website. And on Facebook, it's also Women Hunt 2, Women Fish 2, and Women Camp 2. And, of course, on the About page on there's a phone number, there's email, there's information there. You can go from there. If you want to get a hold of me further and ask any more questions or just kind of pick my brain a little bit more. We also encourage a lot of women to post questions, fan questions, or post their fan photos. Perhaps you had an awesome year 2 years ago, and you want to post, that gorgeous buck that you shot, and you want to post it on there. And we share those all the time. That always encourages women. You have a question about things that most women don't have a place to go and ask. Things like, ladies, what do you do when you have to go to the bathroom when you're at a tree stand all day?
I know the answer to that.
What guys will do, but what do women do, and what's those situations, and what type of material, what are you wearing, where you're at, how high up are you, what do you do? And I ask those questions, post them on there, and then you might get 10 different answers, and one of those answers are going to work for you. Might not work for me, but it will work for different areas, different places, different types, and it's a great place, a source of information for women to come to.
Dawn, it's been a pleasure. Hang with us. You're listening to Pro Talk Outdoors. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Pro Talk Outdoors. Things have been happening for us. Dave, Eric, you guys went out to Nebraska, had a great time. Obviously, spent a good bit of it chasing after the birds. But, hey, once you got them harvested, man, you had some meat to throw in the cooler, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. And I tell you what, you talk about an awesome cooler. The Glacier coolers, they did not disappoint. Let me tell you a quick story on this one. We left Friday morning, like at 6 a.m. We leave Indiana, and Eric wants to throw some meat in the cooler so we could, maybe throw it on a grill when we get out to Nebraska.
Which y'all never did.
No, we never did. Never did. So we do that. We throw the meat in the bottom of the cooler. We throw a bag of ice on it, and we take off. We're gone 8 days. 8 days before we get back. We never ate the meat. We never added any ice to the cooler, but guess what was in the cooler when we got back? A couple 75-degree days.
That's pretty incredible right there.
Ice still in the cooler, meat still good, 8 days later.
That's pretty awesome. And if somebody else wanted one of these, Pro Talk, we'll get them one at a discounted rate.
Absolutely. Go to glaciercoolers.com, glaciercooler.com.
Pro Talk.
Use the promo code PROTALK, PROTALK. Save yourself 20% at checkout. That's pretty phenomenal, guys.
Yeah, can't beat it. You really can't. Obviously,
we can't do much for you, but we can save you 20% on a great cooler.
No, we're not real good, but we know it works for us. So, and we need all the help we can get.
Absolutely.
But stick around, keep listening, keep following in. We're going to have obviously some episodes from your trip out there, or at least one solid episode. Not real sure what we're going to have out of all that yet, but.
And we got a lot of turkey hunting getting ready to fire up, folks.
Man.
You are out there listening, I'm sure. Everybody's kind of getting that fever.
Kentucky season opens really soon. Indiana shortly after that. I know I've been practicing with the calls a little bit, banging the boss. Hopefully going to do them proud and call a couple gobblers in this year. I'm excited, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Kentucky property. You know, the fact that we had that deadly dozen out there, and I went back through and frost-seeded the clover with the real-world chicory clover blend.
Yep.
I think those longbeards are going to be out there strutting in that clover. So,
man, I'm looking forward to opening weekend. Maybe we can find out.
Let's find out.
All right, guys, stick around. Keep listening to us. Keep following. If you haven't made it out there to look at our little sizzle reel, almost like a trailer of what we've got going on within a rut, please head to our Facebook page and check that out. We'll be releasing some other good stuff here shortly as well, along with a revamped website. So hopefully that'll be coming just around the corner. Until next time, guys, hook 'em or hunt 'em. Pro Talk Outdoors.
Later, guys.